that isn't in Silverlight 3, what I'm going to do is add some orientation support. And if you saw Scott Guthrie's keynote yesterday, he very, very quickly demoed orientation support in the emulator. But you might remember when he clicked the rotate button on the emulator, the new screen just kind of snapped into place. And that's what you get for free in the Windows Phone applications, is you get free orientation support, but we don't do any animations for you. But we all know that Silverlight is brilliant at doing animations, so let's see how easy it is to add an animation to orientation change. So I'm going to go into my details page, and up here you'll see this property called supported orientations. Now, to make my app support portrait or landscape, I just type portrait or landscape, and that's essentially what Scott did. So now my app will work portrait or landscape. That's all I do, nothing else. But we want to show you the cool Silverlight orientation change animation, so I'm going to grab some XAML from the snippets here. And really all this is familiar stuff, nothing new here. There's a storyboard that animates a rotate transform. Nothing new here, no rocket science here, it's just a rotate transform. And then if I go into the code, let's just go down here at the bottom. I'm going to add a very simple piece of code. When the orientation change method gets called, which, funnily enough, gets called when the orientation changes, I'm going to do a kind of a reverse rotate, clockwise or counterclockwise, depending on what my new orientation is. So that's going to set me up to be in like the before rotate position. And then I'm just going to call that storyboard, and it's going to do the rotation for me. So that's all I need to do some really cool orientation changes animations. So let's run this in the emulator. Go to details page, and ready, switch, and there we see our cool orientation change animation. And I can go back, and forward. So, thank you. So that's how easy it is to get orientation-aware animated applications on Windows Phone. So let's go now and add the app bar. You've seen in the demos, and Joe talked about the application bar, which is this common piece of UI that lives at the bottom of the page, and it's where you can put things like mini toolbar buttons and menu items. So let's go back again to our XAML. And again, I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit and just copy it all in the interest of time. I missed. And so here we have a bunch of XAML. There's long names: shell, application bar button, application bar icon button, etc. But the crux of it is we have a couple of buttons here, a couple of icon buttons, one called paint bucket, and that's going to be a paint bucket, one called opaque, and that's going to change some opacity for me, and then some menu items: red, green, blue, and yellow. And what they're going to do is they're going to change the value of the paint bucket, which I'm going to use to change the background color of my application. So I need to drop in a couple of assets here just for the icon buttons. Let's go into my content folder, grab these two little icons. And one thing to note is that I do need to set them to be a build action of content, not of resource. And that's because the application bar is drawn by the system, and so the system needs to be able to grab these things as if they were content, not as if they were resources inside my application. So now I've done that. Let me go into my code. And I'm just going to drag in some, I'm going to paste in some code to handle the event handlers on the app bar icons and on the menu items. So nothing rocket sciencey here either. I'm creating a solid color brush called background brush. When my menu gets clicked, I'm going to do a little bit of reflection magic to get the color with the same name as the menu item name. Mike also used some reflection magic in order to get some enumerations. I'm using it to get colors. And then I'm going to set the background brush to be that color. Then when the paint bucket gets clicked, I'm going to change the background of my application to be the color that was set by the menu. And when the opaque button gets clicked, I'm going to make the application bar transparent or opaque. So let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. And you notice here sometimes the emulator forgets its skin. So let's bring it back here. Let's go to the details page, and you'll see here the little app bar popped up. And if I click here, I get a nice little menu. So let's say I want green. I click the paint bucket, my background goes green. I click the menu, I say I want it blue. I click the paint bucket, and my app goes blue. So very, very simple stuff. A couple of event handlers hook this stuff up. And if I rotate the screen, you'll notice, if you watch very carefully, the little icons actually animate as well. Let me try and rotate that around again. You can see the little paint bucket rotates. And this second button, this opaque button I have, is actually going to make the whole app bar transparent or opaque. So if I click it once, my application can now draw right down to the bottom of the screen. And you'll see that if I rotate, you'll see that in this case, I haven't set a margin, so my text actually draws underneath the app bar. But it still works, even though it's transparent. So I can set my background to be red and fill it. Or I can make my app bar opaque again, and my application automatically updates. So that's some integration with the application bar. Let's go back to the app and look at one more thing, and that is splash screen support. So my application right now, it boots pretty fast because it's kind of simple. But if my application was more complicated and had a lot of resources to load, it might take a while to start up. And so we have a super easy way for you to do splash screens in your application. If I go back to my content here, there is an image that looks like this. It says, "My awesome application," because it is indeed awesome. And it's just called splashscreenimage.jpg. I drag that into my application. And again, I want to set the content, so the build action to be content, not resource, so that the operating system can find it. And now I'm going to run this, and it may be too fast to see, but if you're lucky, you'll see my awesome app flash up, and it's gone. But so I think you got to see that for at least a frame. But let's do it one more time. There it is, and it's gone. So the emulator is really, really fast. It's kind of hard to verify your splash screen is working, but it does indeed work. So that's kind of a quick look at some of the navigation stuff we have in Windows Phone application, and also how you use some of the phone-specific features of pages, like orientation and application bar support. So now I'm going to switch back to the PowerPoints. And the next thing we're going to talk about is controls and theming. So as you've seen all these demos, and if you were here in Mike's demo, you saw him show the same code running on the browser and on the phone. What we've done is we've taken the Windows Phone design look and feel and added that to the default Silverlight controls. And sorry, this is auto-forwarding again, so I'm sorry if I get out of line with it. The UI that you've seen is very simple and very elegant. Now, we all know Silverlight can do super flashy things. It can do great media. It can do 3D perspectives. It can do animation and so on. But the UI on the Windows Phone is really simple and elegant, and we'll take a close look at that in a second. The next thing to notice is that we have oversized hit targets. And if you're at Mike Smuger's talk yesterday, he would have talked about minimum hit target size and things like that. And we'll also take a quick look at that in the design tools in a second. The key thing is these are all capacitive touch displays. There's no more stylus. So you really need to be thinking about capacitive touch, people using their fingers to touch your controls. The next thing is that there's a big use of transparency inside the templates. And we'll see this as well in an example of the button. And this is something that Joe mentioned in the keynote, which is we're all about content and not Chrome. And so in order for the content to show through in your application, the default controls actually use a lot of transparency, so that more of the content can show through and less of the Chrome. And then finally, if you didn't catch the talk that Chad and Michael gave yesterday, I recommend you look at it online because they go into a lot of detail about the motivation behind the design and how you can use design in your application. So theming is another part. Sorry, this is auto